Mr. John Burrows. If Mr. Buckley get out of the way, thank you. I'd like to welcome Mr. John Burrows as the new MLA for Northampton. He was signed in early August, and this is our first opportunity to give you a welcome, and I trust you have a good time in this chamber and are able to serve the people well of that area. We now move to questions to the Deputy First Minister, and I call Michelle Guy. Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Before I begin, with your indulgence, Mr. Speaker, I would like to take a moment to reflect on the tragic deaths of Vanessa White and her two children, James and Sarah Rutledge. These were absolutely horrific murders, and I have no doubt that everyone across this House share in the horror of what happened. It emphasises once again the absolute need for us all to work together to end violence against women and girls. I also pay tribute to the dignity and courage of their friends and family, and I think in particular of the school friends and other schoolmates of both of those children as they start back to school this week, and with the grief that undoubtedly they will feel. We want to ensure that all women are safe and feel safe everywhere. That is why the strategic framework to end violence against women and girls addresses the whole range of gender-based violence, abuse and harm, including online. The framework is not intended to displace existing policy remits, but to strengthen and coordinate the executive response to challenging violence against women and girls. The Ending Violence Against Women and Girls Change Fund is a fundamental part of delivering the strategic framework and focuses on prevention. There are many excellent projects, including in our own constituency of Lagan Valley, which work with expert organisations and the PSNI to educate on safety on online spaces. The Department of Health has sponsorship of the Executive's online safety strategy and accompanying 3-year action plan, which was published in February 2021. Our officials are members of the online safety strategy across Departmental Implementation Group and work closely with colleagues to ensure that we use every opportunity to protect women and girls and ensure their safety. The UK Online Safety Act is also an important tool in combating online abuse and harms, and we remain committed to engaging with Ofcom on the implementation of this. Thank you.
Mrs. Guy.
Thank you for that response, Deputy First Minister, and I echo your comments about those awful tragedies. I wanted to ask in follow-up if you regard online safety for our children and young people as a priority, and if so, do you think that the online strategy and action plan that we have at the moment is good enough?
Sir.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for her question. It's incredibly important that all of the actions arising from this are fit for purpose. I've said to this House previously that I myself have had somebody who has been convicted, charged and has pled guilty under the online safety legislation, and he is currently in custody. And that is a demonstration, unfortunately, not only of the Act in action, but of the need for that. I would like to get into a position where we don't need to use that piece of legislation, and that applies right throughout. I want to take the opportunity to extend, of course, to Simon Harris. He's been subjected to a number of threats over the course of the summer, and yet another one just in the last number of days. It is absolutely appalling. It demonstrates that abuse doesn't just target, of course, women and girls. That is the focus of this particular piece of work, but very often those in public life across all political parties. But of course, in terms of this work, it is critically important that we do genuinely get the right actions to tackle this, should it be towards those in public life, women and girls, no matter where they are, and in particular children.
Again.
I want to acknowledge the leadership that the First Minister and the Deputy First Minister have given to highlighting the scourge of ending violence against women and girls. Making progress will require a whole of government and whole of society approach. Can the Deputy First Minister therefore provide an update how the TEO is working collaboratively with executive departments to tackle sexual violence against women and girls?
Thank you for the member for her question. Yes, it's one of the 6 key outcomes, which is working better together, and that means all parts of our system working together to try to tackle this. We had the privilege and honour just last week of attending an Ending Violence Against Women and Girls conference at Craigavon Integrated College, and there we joined with, I think, over 100 pupils from a number of schools. But also in particular with the McNally family, who have done such incredibly brave work in this area. It must be so hard for them to talk about Natalie, to talk about who she was and to step up time and time again. But I know that they are doing that because they really genuinely do not want violence to happen to another woman, what happened to their Natalie. So I do pay tribute to them. It was an absolute honour to be at that event with them. But it also demonstrates that it's not just about working across government, working with local government, but it's also about working with young people, working with all parts of our society at the earliest possible opportunity to tackle those misogynistic attitudes, to tackle those issues that in turn will give rise to that violence against women and girls.
David Brooke, or Dan Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and can I thank the Deputy First Minister for her answers and for her reference to the conference that we attended on Friday. But one of the issues that is really important to families who have experienced this type of terrible violence is the justice system, and in particular the length of time that it is taking for cases to come before the courts, the anxiety that causes those families. Will the Minister work within the Executive to ensure that there is a much swifter response for these families?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for her important question. She's absolutely right. Justice in Northern Ireland is much too slow. And it really puts people, not just those, of course, who are waiting as those to appear before the courts, but of course the victims' families who have to suffer for many, many months, if not years, waiting for that case to come up in court. That is an unbearable anxiety on that family. Families need to see justice done, and they need to see that done in a much swifter way. I had the opportunity to return to the bar a number of years ago, and I have to say I was genuinely shocked by the length of time criminal cases are taking. I was involved in a number of cases, none of which got to trial over the couple of years I was actually at the bar. So look, this is an urgent issue. We need to tackle it. Justice must be swifter. I do believe that we are the slowest across these aisles. That is not acceptable. It is not acceptable for victims. It is not acceptable for their families. And we need to get on and really tackle that issue and produce swift justice now.
David Brooks.
To you, Mr. Speaker. Sure.
I thank the member for his question. President Trump's unprecedented second state visit to the UK is an opportunity to showcase Northern Ireland's strengths, build relationships with the President and his team, and boost trade and investment. Using the visit to build personal ties is particularly important given the UK-US economic prosperity deal and ongoing uncertainty around tariffs. I've had an opportunity to personally participate in the state banquet at Windsor Castle on Wednesday 17th of September, which is being hosted by His Majesty the King, in honour of the President of the United States of America and the First Lady. As with all engagements, I will use this event to promote Northern Ireland as a great place to live, work, invest and visit, and remind the President about our unique connection to the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. As always, I will use this opportunity to showcase this fantastic place I am proud to call home. When I met the President in Washington in March, we spoke about golf, but of course we spoke about Northern Ireland, and I will be keen to highlight how successful this year's 153rd Open has been. It is vital to many businesses and communities across Northern Ireland that we not only reaffirm our unique position to the President, but cultivate a constructive relationship with the administration, one that supports our exporters as well as encouraging investment. Through the Northern Ireland Bureau, we are developing those relationships with key stakeholders, many of whom are new in DC. But this is much more about Northern Ireland benefiting. It's not just about Northern Ireland benefiting from US investment, but also our companies can invest and benefit the US as well.
Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the Minister for both her answer and her work in this area. There's scarcely been a more important time, I would suggest, to engage with the President of the United States. The Deputy First Minister had to step up at St Patrick's Day last year whenever the First Minister decided not to show leadership. Could I ask what the plans are in that regard this time around? Will the First Minister be attending?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for his question. At this stage, the First Minister will not be attending the state banquet with President Trump. But look, from my point of view, I engage with people, politicians, leaders, right from all different shades of political opinion. And as far as I'm concerned, this isn't about what I personally feel about them. It's not even about what my view is about their political opinion. It is about me being in this role and stepping up and showing that leadership and engaging with people where there is a particular interest and importance for Northern Ireland. I do believe that that is what leadership is all about, and I certainly won't be found wanting in terms of stepping forward. Should it be representing Northern Ireland in terms of the D-Day commemorations, to talking to Prime Ministers, to going to London and to lobby for what is best for this place, to raise our issues at every opportunity, and yes, to go to DC and to talk to President Trump, to go to these events. When we met with His Majesty the King, he was very clear that he wanted the devolved regions and nations to participate in the likes of state banquets. That had not happened before in these state visits because, of course, these are unique and fantastic opportunities to engage not just with the President, but his entire team that he brings with him. There are many, many people who come to the UK as part of that delegation, all covering everything from trade to social links to departmental and right through in terms of the administration. And you do get a good opportunity to talk around these events as well to a number of key people. So I'm looking forward to that. I will always stand up and speak up for Northern Ireland.
Matthew Till.
Speaker, Deputy First Minister, given the conversation we've just had around violence against women, it's important to put on the record that Donald Trump was found liable in a New York court by a jury of sexually assaulting a woman, and there have been numerous other allegations against him. So can I ask that in your and your office's engagement with President Trump, acknowledging his office and the importance of the United States to this place, that we don't operate a values-based policy, whether it's in relation to violence against women, the ongoing genocide in Gaza, or the use of the authorities in the United States to intimidate people. This cannot be a values-free engagement. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister that it won't be?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will engage with the President of the United States because of the role that he holds, which is the President of the United States. The US is incredibly important for Northern Ireland. I could outline many issues where I disagreed fundamentally with previous presidents that I've had the privilege of meeting, not least President Biden. I go on and I did what I did because and for the people of Northern Ireland. I will outline to the member very quickly some of the key reasons of the importance of that US investment. US investment in Northern Ireland last year, $1.5 billion, not just last year but over the course of the last decade. 32,000 employees in Northern Ireland are employed by US companies. 28% of all Northern Ireland employment from international companies are US companies. There's over 50 Northern Ireland companies in the US. The US is the second largest single export market for Northern Ireland. I will, as I've said, step up and speak up for Northern Ireland when others shy away from that, because regardless of personal views or how your feelings on that may be, it is important to Northern Ireland, it is important to the UK, and I will be there to speak up for Northern Ireland and for Northern Ireland businesses.
Well, we'll go again.
Deputy First Minister touched on the success of the Open in her initial response, and it was great to see the promotion of the North Antrim coast that flowed from the Open during the summer. Can I ask the Deputy First Minister if she can give an indication on the projected economic impact of hosting the Open, and if there are any plans to host it again in the near future?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, look, absolutely. What an incredible success. I think the only thing that didn't go to plan was it wasn't a Rory win, but we've had a Rory McIlroy win just this weekend, and I want to extend my sincere congratulations to him for that. It didn't come through for the Open, but we have a win now. Yes, but a huge success. Look, it showcased our beautiful North Coast, and when speaking to people from all over the globe, they were blown away at the Open about how beautiful the scenery was, how fantastically organised the entire tournament was. But 280,000 spectators attending, estimated £213 million worth of benefit to Northern Ireland. Anybody who would have tried to book a hotel for that week up anywhere near the area will have known the huge benefit. But it was also really positive to see how many of the restaurants and local shops were full. We learnt from the last time, I think there had been feedback from some that the conditions around attending the Open did not facilitate the same benefit to the local economy, and I think that was addressed very successfully this time. So a hugely successful Open, and it would be great to have the British Open back in Northern Ireland again.
Paula Bradshaw.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. I fully agree that dialogue and engagement is really important, but I continue to be concerned that we have not yet seen the international relations strategy that would underpin all types of engagement on a world stage, and I would appreciate an update on that. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank the member for her question. She will know in her role in the committee that, of course, international engagement as a policy area is a non-devolved area, but of course there's much that we can do, and we do, and that is across a number of different areas, particularly in relation to soft diplomacy. That's the reaching out through our office in Brussels and in DC. But of course, those offices go well beyond just those physical locations, as she is well aware. But it's also particularly in relation to working with Invest NI and NI Tourism to make sure that those two elements are fully integrated within the key messages. I do encourage ministers to get out, to go out and to tell our story. We must champion Northern Ireland at every turn, because if we are not doing it, then who will? We are here in these roles to be champions for Northern Ireland. We have a strong story to tell. Yes, we've got challenges. Of course we've got challenges. And that, as we commence the new term, must be something that we are really driving forward on in terms of delivery. But of course we've got lots of good news to tell as well, and we really ought to do that and to champion that at every opportunity.
Colin Killian.
Question number 3.
Thank you. Mr. Speaker, with your permission, Junior Minister Cameron will answer this question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and we are very pleased that the Inquiry and Redress Bill passed its second stage before the summer recess. Ministers welcomed the opportunity to meet with the Committee Chair and Deputy Chair to discuss the bill before it entered its committee stage, and we do thank the Committee for its work over the summer months. The Department has engaged with both victims and survivors and committee officials in preparation for the Committee's further evidence sessions, which are scheduled to begin this week. We acknowledge, Mr. Speaker, this is a highly sensitive and complex piece of legislation, and it is important that people have the opportunity to provide further views through the committee process. We are committed to working closely with others to deliver this important legislation, and there is, of course, an opportunity to shape it further as this work progresses through its legislative process. This work remains a key priority for ministers.
Mr. Killian.
And I want to thank the Junior Minister for her response, but she will appreciate, I'm sure, that many victims and survivors have expressed deep concern about the posthumous date for redress, and indeed other concerns with the draft bill. So will the Junior Minister commit to listen to these concerns and indeed continue their engagement with the victims and survivors of the mother and baby institutions, migrant laundries and workhouses?
Sure.
I thank the member for that very important question, and we do, yes, of course, acknowledge that some victims and survivors were disappointed by the proposed 2011 posthumous date in the bill, and we are actively listening to their concerns, and we also welcome the committee's views also. Posthumous claims for an admission-based scheme going back to 1922 doesn't have any precedents. It also presents a number of risks. We need to make sure that we have a deliverable scheme which supports as many people as possible. So there are important factors to consider, not least the need to strike a balance between the desire to make reparations for the past and with the pressures that are felt by public services today that we're all acutely aware of, and tomorrow, such as issues around health and education. So in terms of affordability, we wish in a perfect world we would have unlimited resource, but we don't have that. So we don't live in that perfect world, but we will, of course, yes, listen and engage, and we will watch as the legislation makes its way through its legislative processes. And the aim really is to strike a balance which is fair for everyone.
Mr. Dixon.
Junior Minister, for your response, and thank you for the way in which the bill is currently progressing. May I ask you, have you had an opportunity, and have your civil servants had an opportunity to reflect on the recent documentary on television setting out the situation in England with regards to mother and baby homes? The lack of an apology from the United Kingdom government, we are at least a step ahead in respect of that. And specifically, what liaison will your department have with authorities at Westminster to ensure that we get a both islands approach to mother and baby homes?
Minister.
Thank the member for that important question. I think the public inquiry itself will tease out some of those particular issues, but if the member does wish to write to the office, we will ensure that he receives a full response.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Thank you, Minister, for your answers so far. And I suppose I'm going to reiterate about the posthumous claims and the arbitrary nature of it. Victims and survivors need to be listened to, but be listened to with respect and dignity, and that currently cannot stand, because it is just totally disrespectful for victims and survivors if that date still stands.
Thank again the member for her important question, and we do, as I must reiterate, we do absolutely acknowledge some of the disappointment that has been expressed. There are others that are not so disappointed, but we do understand that there are a range of views in particular with this, and we do have to make sure that whatever we do going forward is fit for purpose and that it does meet the needs of this legislation. But we will continue to listen as we go forward to ensure that there is fairness for those victims and survivors.
All right, Harvey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question 4.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As part of our ongoing commitment to ensuring our circumstances are understood and appropriately reflected in policy and strategic decision-making within the UK internal market, we continue to engage with the UK Government across a range of forums. These representations have been made at meetings with the Prime Minister, heads of devolved government, the Interministerial Standing Committee, as well as the East-West Council, at which members of Intertrade UK were also present, and many other engagements as well. They have also been made in the context of discussions on the Windsor Framework and the UK-EU Strategic Partnership in the Interministerial Group on UK-EU Relations. These engagements reflect our continued commitment to collaborative working with the UK Government, but also on raising these important issues. We will continue to proactively participate in all forums to advocate for Northern Ireland's interests at every opportunity.
All right, Harvey.
Thank you. Thank you. Deputy First Minister, does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that the Murphy Review was a missed opportunity? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his supplementary question. Look, absolutely, it was a missed opportunity. It was deeply disappointing, alas, perhaps not surprising. There are huge issues facing our businesses. I am dismayed, just to catch the end, as I came into the chamber for my questions, to hear these issues being dismissed in such terms once again. I think the final line before I stood up was somebody describing it, I do believe it was the Leader of the Opposition, as a nonsense debate. This is an incredibly important debate. Those people who decry so-called Trump tariffs and barriers with trade seem absolutely happy to accept all of this unnecessary bureaucracy, paperwork and process that amount to non-tariff barriers, not just between the UK and the EU, but of course within the UK internal market. It's an absolute disgrace. It needs to be addressed. The UK Government needs to start taking it seriously. It has a huge cost to business. Business is drowning in the paperwork. And the UK Government promised the people of Northern Ireland unfettered UK trade. They must deliver.
Ciara Ferguson.
The recent publication of the independent review of the Windsor Framework notes that one of the most obvious benefits attributed to the Windsor Framework is the dual market access. Does the Deputy First Minister agree with me that now we need to see the implementation that both the British Government and the Executive continue to emphasise and publicise the commercial benefits of dual market access actions?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Look, at this stage, there's no evidence of any benefit of dual market access. And we continue to tackle the huge bureaucracy in terms of internal UK trade. Of course, within the Office of First and Deputy First Minister, there are different views on this issue, but I've asked for evidence of any benefit of dual market access. I haven't received any evidence that there's been any benefit of that whatsoever. But instead, what we've got is bureaucracy, paperwork, processes. All of it is completely unnecessary. The UK government needs to step up, get this addressed and start working for business, not just on this issue, but of course for the UK economy as a whole.
Much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the 28th of May, officials told the Executive Office Committee that regulatory divergence from GB was no longer an issue. Deputy First Minister, given the motion your party colleagues have brought to the Chamber today, do you hold the same view as your official? And what does it say about the desire of the Executive Office to address these issues that this remark was ever made in the first place?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Of course, as indicated, there will be a range of different views on this issue, but I would appeal to people to look at the facts, to listen to companies, to listen to what people are facing, to look at what the UK government promised and what they are not fulfilling. There are real challenges for businesses. In terms of regulatory divergence, it is correct to say at this stage there is a very, very little regulatory divergence, but despite of that, we are still unnecessarily checking things at the bequest of the Windsor Framework, despite the promises that there was to be unfettered internal UK trade. That is not proportionate, it is not based on risk, it is completely unnecessary, and it is pushing onto businesses the cost of all of this. So of course, if indeed the UK-EU deal comes through, and there are, for example, SBS agreements, that does remove any advantage in terms of so-called advantages in terms of the dual market access, but it would indeed, in a practical way, smooth things further. However, it doesn't remove the challenges that remain in terms of customs paperwork or other processes that were promised to be got rid of and are not. They are still in existence, and the government needs to remove them now. They serve no purpose. It's completely unnecessary. Get rid of it.
John Stewart.
Deputy First Minister for answer. Despite the commitments of the British Government, Deputy First Minister, to raise awareness and training for companies in GB supply in Northern Ireland, many companies are now telling businesses here that they're simply not willing to supply to Northern Ireland because, in their opinion, it's just too much hassle. This is having huge impact on the supply chain, and we're seeing rising costs in the back of that. Surely that's unacceptable, and the British Government clearly needs to be doing more on this issue.
Minister.
Thank you. Look, the member is absolutely right. Look, some companies don't supply Northern Ireland because they don't understand the system. Some companies try to ask for various company numbers or looking for processes that are not needed. I get it all of the time when people contact me, and it takes a bit of time, and you can navigate and you can get it resolved. However, there are still requirements. There are certain certificates that are required by certain people. I was contacted by a man, Roy, from Mid-Ulster, who was trying to bring a tractor to Northern Ireland. He was requiring 4 certificates. He couldn't give the haulage company a specific date as to when he was to get that, and therefore he missed that window, and those tractors were stuck in Scotland for 4 to 6 weeks, despite being paid in full, despite the fact that Northern Ireland is that part of the United Kingdom. That is not acceptable, and it is one of many, many different examples where, quite frankly, as I describe it, the blob gone crazy. It is bureaucracy for bureaucracy's sake. We need to tackle that. The biggest frustration that people have about governments, should it be here, across the United Kingdom or across the globe, is the fact that it's so difficult to get things sorted because of this unnecessary, disproportionate, non-risk-based nonsense that people are putting in place. They need to get rid of it. It doesn't serve any purpose. Get it sorted.
Connie again.
Question number 5, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know how important this memorial plaque is, which is why officials have engaged extensively with victims and survivors in recent months to ensure they heard a wide range of opinions on the wording. Draft options were shared with representative groups, individuals not affiliated with any group, as well as COSICA, that's our Commissioner, and the Victims and Survivors Service. A final draft has now been developed reflecting the views shared during that engagement and is now under consideration. We remain committed to progressing this important inquiry recommendation and are keen to move forward as quickly as possible.
Ms. Higgin.
Thank you, Deputy First Minister. That is welcome progress. Could I have reassurances from you that the most recent draft has the full backing from groups of victims and survivors?
Thank you. I thank the member for her question. You'll be aware that that's under consideration at the moment. because officials have undertaken quite a significant task of making sure that there is maximum buy-in and views taken in relation to the specific wording. And while the wording will not reflect exactly what everybody wants, because that's just simply not possible, we have undertaken that process to try to get the maximum buy-in as possible. So hopefully we'll be moving on that very, very shortly. And I want to take the opportunity to thank you, Mr. Speaker, for your help and support. I know that you have been personally involved with working with many of the victims and survivors over a long period of time, and thank you for your cooperation with the Department and with us in terms of trying to get this issue resolved.
Deputy First Minister, for your answer so far. Deputy First Minister, just on the back of the question that's just been asked by the member Connie Egan, can you give us a guarantee that the wording on the plaque will be reflective of the experiences and of the input of victims and survivors, and can you give us some sense of what that engagement looked like exactly?
Minister.
Thank you. I thank the member for her question. As indicated, that engagement was very much about communicating and talking to those within groups, but also individuals and others that were known to us that are outside of that group. Extensive engagement with the Commissioner and, of course, the officials working to develop that as well. So I am optimistic that the wording of that will reflect a consensus across victims and survivors. That was our aim, to try to get resolution to what has been an outstanding commitment to victims and survivors for too long. And I think we are all on the same page of really wanting this to be resolved as soon as possible, to make sure that victims and survivors can see what was promised to them reflected in this place, but also that we can then move on to look at the other outstanding commitments from that overall inquiry.
Moving on to topical questions. Matthew O'Toole.
Deputy First Minister, the Executive's failing. That's not just the opposition saying that. Independent think tanks like Pivotal are scathing about delivery, and among the areas where delivery is woeful is in special educational needs. Outside today, kids and their families are protesting for basic services. While today the Education Minister isn't delivering that, he's issuing a page of peremptory guidance which will make other vulnerable kids feel anxious and nervous. Is this another example of your party and the Executive failing to deliver, but rather engaging in bullying and deflection?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for his question. This has been an executive that is focused on delivery regardless of the challenges. There are challenges in terms of the funding that is available. There are challenges within our system to make sure it is a system that can deliver for people, that is fit for purpose. But we have delivered, not least in terms of getting the programme for government out, around £80 million worth of funding out to an early learning and childcare subsidy package, £25 million package for early learning and childcare. We've published the framework to end violence against women and girls, including the delivery plan and money actually on the ground for people. As mentioned, we have just this week had the release of some 50,000 additional appointments right across inpatient, outpatient and diagnostic within the health waiting list and tackling that priority. So there has been delivery. Perhaps we need to communicate it in a stronger way to make sure that people are aware of what has been delivered. But I am pleased that the Education Minister, he has published the SEN plan. There are over 3,000 additional places on SEN. I am pleased that finally today there's no child that is without a place. But the key focus must move on to ensuring that those places are suitable places, that parents can get confirmation of those places at an earlier stage. That has taken a huge amount of work because of the number of additional places that are required. But it is a demonstration of this executive in action. It was a big challenge. That challenge was tackled. Those places were created. It wasn't easy to do. But of course, more needs to be done and the system needs to be improved, and I know that the Education Minister is up for that challenge.
Mr. O'Toole.
What more needs to be done is a remarkable understatement. Minister, you didn't specifically address the point about the cheap headlines your party and the Education Minister are chasing today around vulnerable kids and guidance in schools. But I want to ask one other specific question today, which is in relation to delivery. We've set 6 tests for you. One of them is a very specific one. Will work be undertaken, will work have begun on a rebuilt Casement Park by the end of this mandate?
Look, the member has said a number of times on a number of issues already today, should it be from the Windsor framework right through to this important issue about safe spaces for biological females, that these issues are not important, to dismiss them, to say that they are a nonsense. Look, this is absolutely wrong. I think if this place is going to work, you need to recognise that while it may not be an important issue to you, it is an important issue to many other people. I have outlined that across a wide range of issues, this is an executive that is delivering, not just in terms of bringing forward the programme for government, but of course the transformation board, those transformation projects, looking at those budgets, looking into a 3-year budget just coming down the line. But we will do whatever we can do to maximise the impact of what is a limited financial situation. And that has included action so far. That has included getting real money into parents' pockets, should that be through the childcare subsidy, to creating those 3,000 plus additional SEN places, to ensuring that the Ending Violence Against Women and Girls strategy has been published and there's funding out on the ground. There are many, many things that are happening that are improving people's lives, and that includes the big issues such as tackling health waiting lists. I know that the member constantly goes back to casement while dismissing and demeaning everybody else for the particular issues that they question, but the reality is on health, on education, on trying to grow the economy, on championing Northern Ireland, it is the DUP ministers that have stepped up to do that time and time again, and this is an executive across all parties that will be pushing as hard as possible to deliver for the people of Northern Ireland against our programme for government priorities.
Dan Dodds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Deputy First Minister, this summer we have endured the spectacle of the First Minister for All doubling down on her attendance at IRA memorials, and her colleague, rather ironically, urging Sinn Féin to embrace the IRA more fully. Meanwhile, the Secretary of State has been running to Dublin and telling us he has almost reached an agreement on legacy with the Dublin government. Is it not time that we sought the views of the innocent victims of terrorism on what an agreement on legacy should look like, and for local politicians to condemn IRA terrorism?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank the member for her important question. And it is worth reiterating time and time again that terrorism was always wrong, the violence was always wrong, there was never any justification, and there was always an alternative. When I sit down and I talk to victims' families, many of whom are still grieving today, many of whom are feeling that loss, and they see the loss of their loved ones being mocked, being laughed about, being those who carried out those attacks being glorified. That is wrong. I disagree with the glorification of terrorism. Should it be about the IRA prisoners, UVF, UDA, there is no space for it. It needs to go away. It is absolutely wrong. And I do believe that the police need to take a very robust line in tackling glorification of terrorism. But of course, in the heart of everything that we do, we should always remember the victims that are still mourning, no matter what side of the community that they come from. Their loss is acute, and we must do more to talk about these issues in a sensitive way, to treat these issues in a sensitive way, but of course to step up and to listen and to deliver for the victims and survivors of the Troubles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Deputy First Minister, many of us are really angry at the Secretary of State running to Dublin for an agreement with legacy, but actually not addressing the fact that Dublin has never admitted its role in IRA terrorism. It has actually not cooperated with the OMA inquiry, and there's no justice from the Dublin government for families like those of Ian Sproul, Lord Justice Gibson, the Hanna family. Can you assure us that you will do everything that you can to make sure that the issue of legacy addresses the core principle of justice?
Absolutely, the member is correct. The approach to legacy must always have justice at the heart of it. But of course this process has been opaque at best. The Secretary of State will deign to tell us what he has decided to do after extensive consultations with the Irish Government. This is an appalling way to approach this. Victims should have been at the heart of the redesign of this process, and I do not get any sense that has happened. I think the Secretary of State has asked for views, he has taken them in, and we are to wait to see what him and all of his judgment will say. Look, I notice that there has been a reshuffle, a significant reshuffle of the UK government. And I have to say that thus far, quite frankly, it has been shambolic by this Labour government, and I think it is time for them to get their act together. And while I may not be optimistic, I think I am hopeful that a reshuffle is an opportunity for them to do so. Should it be from legacy and many other issues, this is a UK government that needs to get a grip. It needs to get a grip of our economy, it needs to get a grip on immigration, it needs to get a grip on tackling the internal barriers to the UK internal market, and it needs to get a grip on legacy and start to talk to the people most impacted by it.
The summer months, we witnessed sickening displays of racist and sectarian hatred displayed on bonfires in Magashal, Derry and elsewhere. Deputy First Minister, do you believe these are legitimate expressions of culture, or will you join with me in unequivocally condemning these displays of hate and calling for those responsible to be held to account?
Thank you. I thank the member for his question. I think that throughout the year, sadly, we see demonstrations that have aspects of them that are hateful, that are unkind, that are unpalatable, and that are entirely unacceptable. And this happens right throughout Northern Ireland from many different areas. And I have to say that, first of all, we should recognise that it is a small minority of people. When we look at what happened over the course of the summer and last summer, it is a minority of people that carry these out. I believe that the vast majority of people are opposed to it, are opposed to hate, are opposed to any threat, violence or intimidation. He will be aware that we are currently looking at a review of Together Building United Community, TBUC, our Good Relations Strategy. And we've agreed to roll the FICT recommendations into that process as we move towards TBUC 2 to take into account some of these challenges. But I think it's important to say that there is also absolutely no role for any paramilitary symbols, flags, activity, glorification, whatever that may be. It is hugely hurtful to victims on all sides when those things happen. And I think in all of our displays of cultural identity, we should be respectful, but we should also then respect that as well. That does not happen, and we've seen the worst of that at times by a minority this summer.
Mr McGuigan.
Thank you. Deputy First Minister mentioned TBUC and executive strategies, but Deputy First Minister, in light of these incidents, as well as the serious health concerns and environmental concerns and risks posed by bonfires, do you agree that the current unregulated approach isn't working and that political action is needed to end this cycle of illegal, dangerous and hate-filled bonfires?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Look, again, it's important to point out that across Northern Ireland every year there are hundreds and hundreds of bonfires, the vast majority of which are carried out in an absolutely peaceful way as part of a community celebration. Of course, Northern Ireland is not unique to that. The culture of bonfire building as a form of commemoration and celebration is something that is common in many different places, not outside of Northern Ireland as well. But there are a minority of cultural events and expressions, not just in relation to bonfires, but across many different types of expression that do cause offence. And those are key issues for us to tackle in terms of moving forward with that review. They're not easy issues to tackle, but again, I would reassure everybody listening to always remember that this is a small minority that we do need to take on, but of course the vast majority of these are cultural celebrations and commemorations carried out in an appropriate way.
Michelle McIlvaine.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I ask the Deputy First Minister for her assessment of the Equality Commission response to the UK Supreme Court decision for Women Scotland and the Scottish Ministers.
Thank you. I thank the member for her important and very relevant question today. At the heart of all of this must be a fundamental principle, which is that there should be safe spaces for biological females. That is at the heart of the court case. That is indeed what the court had ruled, that gender is based on biological sex. And again, I would say, look, I was very disappointed in the Equality Commission advice, but alas, I wasn't surprised. I do think it represents a huge overreach in relation to a possible interpretation of Article 2 within their particular opinion. I do think that they should have stepped forward and stood up for women and stood up to protect safe spaces for women. I welcome the fact that the Education Minister today has done that. Indeed, moving forward, other departments must look at this and to make sure that we are continuing to do everything that we can to protect those in vulnerable spaces.
Ms. McElwain.
Thank the Deputy First Minister for her answer. And does she sort of unequivocally agree that this continues to leave women feeling vulnerable in places where they should be feeling safe, such as single-sex changing rooms, toilets, and that any ongoing uncertainty caused by this delay by the Equality Commission is deeply frustrating, given the recognition of the common-sense reality provided in that judgment?
Minister.
Thank you, and I thank the member again for her supplementary question. Look, this is a matter of common sense. Women need safe spaces, women deserve safe spaces, and many women are demanding safe spaces because that's what the law is there and designed to do. And indeed, in terms of moving forward, the Equality Commission had an opportunity to clarify and to give that certainty. They haven't done so. And we could end up the only part of the United Kingdom without that clarity and without that certainty. And I would say, the argument that they are making, and no diminution of rights, what about the diminution of my rights as a woman and the rights of women right across Northern Ireland? We did not consent to have those damaged or dismissed or demeaned in the way that they have been thus far. So look, it is time for common sense. It is time for the Equality Commission to give some clear advice and to make sure that they are providing in legal duties a safe space and indeed a fair platform for our young girls.
Moving on to the Minister for Education questions. Question 2 and question 13 have been withdrawn, and I call Connie Egan.